So we're continuing to learn about Descartes Meditation 1, and we're going to see why Descartes believes that nothing from the senses is completely certain and indubitable, and rather that everything from the senses is at least somewhat uncertain and somewhat doubtable. Or at least it looks like that's what he's arguing. We're going to see there's some subtlety to that by the time we're done with his module, but that's what he appears to be claiming as his premise for his conclusion. So remember, it looks like at the end of the meditation, he says, I should hold back from all my opinions. And his three premises for that are that he should hold back assent from opinions which are not completely certain and indubitable. He thinks that everything from the senses is at least somewhat uncertain and somewhat dubitable. And so from the bottom two premises, it follows that we should hold back our assent from any opinions that come from the senses. And he says, well, everything that I've accepted up until now is most true, was from the senses, and so I should hold back from all those opinions, and everything else was even less certain, and so I should hold back from all of my opinions. And we are interested in the middle one, nothing from the senses is completely certain and indubitable. So how's Descartes going to establish this? How is he going to argue that nothing from the senses is certain? He's going to give us three problematic scenarios: everyday perceptual mistakes, dreaming, and a flawed creator. And he's going to, what makes these scenarios problematic? Well, they have two aspects in them. First, in each of them, sensory perception is inaccurate. In the first one, there's sensory mistakes. In the second one, you're dreaming, and so the world is not the way you think it seems to be in perception. And if you have a flawed creator, the flawed creator has somehow given you sensory perception that is misleading about the nature of reality, because your sensory organs have been created in a way that makes their products inaccurate. So the first way in which each of these scenarios is problematic is that your sensory perception is inaccurate. And the second way is that your sensory perception can't tell you whether or not you're in them. So you can't tell whether or not you're dreaming, you can't tell whether or not there's a flawed creator, you can't tell whether or not you're making sensory mistakes. And these two aspects of these scenarios together are what make them problematic, and are going to help Descartes to establish this premise. So let's get into these scenarios. The first one are perceptual mistakes. So what is Descartes thinking about here? Well, he says, from time to time, I have found that the senses deceive, and it is prudent never to trust completely those who have deceived us once. So how might your senses deceive you? Well, something that's far away, you might be deceived about its size or its shape. It looks one way, but it's actually a different way, right? Or the lighting's not good, and so something looks like it's one way, but it's actually another way. You hear something that wasn't there. We all have, there are all these sort of little sensory mistakes. And so fair enough, Descartes says, well, look, if the senses can make any mistakes, then why should we trust them at all? But he actually has a very straightforward answer to this. He says, look, I'm here sitting by the fire, wearing a winter dressing gown, holding this piece of paper in my hands, and so on. Again, how could it be denied that these hands or this whole body are mine? So yeah, sure, in some situations, sensory perception is straightforwardly mistaken. When we talked about those illusions, sensory illusions in previous videos. But those are all sort of marginal cases. They're not central cases where, under good conditions, when there's good lighting and you're not tired and so on, and things you're seeing are close at hand and you're not completely distracted and so on, then actually your sensory perception is very accurate, and we don't have any reason to think that it's inaccurate. And so sensory mistakes are not going to really do for Descartes what he wants to do. They're not going to give him this radical doubt. So it's true that there are these peripheral opinions we have. That distant object is very large, or it's really dark and you think that that's a snake and it turns out to be a stick or whatever. So yes, those opinions are uncertain, but really, and that's sort of, on the one hand, that's important, but for us, so what? That doesn't affect our central beliefs like I have a body, or that's a fire over there, or our beliefs in physics and astronomy. Of course, in physics and astronomy, when we're doing experimentation, we need to make sure that our experimental tools are working right and all of that, but we do that. So while there are sensory mistakes, straightforwardly, they don't give us reason to they give us no reason to doubt our central sensorily based beliefs. So this scenario is not going to do for Descartes what he wants it to do. It doesn't undermine enough. And it certainly doesn't get us to the skeptical catastrophe at the end of the first meditation. So we have the second scenario, the dreaming scenario. And so Descartes says, look, I could be dreaming, and I might not be able to tell that I'm dreaming. He says, I see plainly that there are never any sure signs by means of which being awake can be distinguished from being asleep. So when we're dreaming, we have lots of sensory experiences that are inaccurate, right? We imagine that, we're wherever, right? We have flying dreams, right? Or dreams that there's a monster chasing us, or whatever they are. And almost basically we never dream that we're actually in our bed asleep. All the sensory experiences we have in sleep are inaccurate. Now, if we could tell that we were dreaming, then that wouldn't be a problem, because we'd be able to say, sure, we're having these sensory, I'm having these experiences, but these are all the inaccurate ones. These are the dreaming ones, and I know that they're not to be trusted, so no problem. But Descartes says, no. There's no sure way of telling whether or not you're having a dream or not. Now that might seem kind of strange. Of course you can usually tell whether or not you're having a dream. And Descartes might say, yes, usually, maybe you can. Usually you can tell that when you're dreaming, you can tell that you're dreaming. I mean, usually we don't actually tell that we're dreaming when we're dreaming because we're not aware that we're dreaming. But usually if you were to somehow be able to reflect on it, you would be able to tell, oh, this is a dream, because our dreams are really weird, right? But that's usually the way things are. That's the way our dreams usually are. They're usually really weird. But are they always really weird? Do they have to be always really weird? Is it part of the definition of a dream that it be really weird? Why couldn't it happen that you're sleeping and you have a dream that's actually where everything is perfectly normal and nothing weird happens? You don't fly, there aren't monsters, nothing strange happens. It's just you're going about your day, blah, blah, blah. Surely that could happen, and how could you distinguish that kind of dream from waking reality? Descartes says you couldn't, and so that's why he says there are never any sure signs. There are lots of somewhat reliable signs to tell that, oh yeah, I'm dreaming, that this is a dream experience, but he says, I want a sure sign, because remember, he says, I want certainty. I want to be certain, and can I be certain? No, I cannot be certain that I'm not dreaming. I can't be absolutely certain when I have these experiences that they are not dream experiences. So he says. And he concludes from that, well, then I should hold back from all opinions that would be false if I were dreaming, right? Because at this point he says, I don't want to have any opinions that might be false. And if this is an opinion that might be falsified by my having a dream, that maybe I'm having a dream right now, if this opinion relies on my not having a dream right now, but I can't tell, then I don't want that opinion. I'm not going to run the risk of having a false belief generated by the fact that I'm dreaming and I can't tell it. And so this is a more powerful worry than the sensory mistake worry. It can undermine our peripheral beliefs, our beliefs based, that distant object is very large, but they can also undermine our central beliefs, right? Like I have a body even, or certainly that is a fire, right? I'm having a dream that's a fire, and no, it's not, there's no fire there, I'm only dreaming that there's a fire. Or physics and astronomy, right? So, Galileo and Copernicus, they do all these observations of the stars. They don't know what they are at that time, but they're just shooting telescopes up, looking at the heavenly objects, and they discover, some of that stuff up there actually looks like physical stuff, and so on, and they start deriving all these conclusions in physics and astronomy. Well, all of those experiences that they have while they're doing physics and astronomy, those could be dreams, and so all the evidence that we have for physics and astronomy and all our other scientific investigation, well, that could be based on dreaming experiences, so we should jettison that as well. Maybe I could even be dreaming that I have a body. Right? And so the dreaming worry is a problem for our more central beliefs. It undermines our certainty in those beliefs as well. Because we could be dreaming. All the evidence that we have for those beliefs could be coming not from real sensory perception of those states of affairs, but rather from dreams, and we can't tell whether or not that sensory evidence is dreams or actual sensory perception of reality. So we can't be certain in those beliefs, and so we should let go of them. So here are Aang and Katara and Sokka on a wall. And, this is a still from an anime, and it's false, right? Aang and Katara and Sokka are not real people. They don't really exist. Maybe, that wall really exists, but certainly they don't. Their clothes don't. None of that stuff actually really exists. But how does this picture work? Well, it represents real kinds of things. Even though those people don't exist, they were they have bodies, and there actually really are bodies. There really are people. There really is clothing and so on. And the picture manages to represent them because although it doesn't represent real individuals, it represents real kinds of things like clothing and human bodies and swords and so on. And Descartes is worried that dreams might be working like that. So while you're dreaming, right, when you're dreaming, you're not representing anything that actually happens. You may be representing real kinds of things. So in particular, in your dream you're driving a car. And maybe that car, sometimes our dreams actually represent real things like our bodies, but let's not even worry about that. Let's consider, how do dreams even work at the very basis? Well, whether or not the dream is representing something that's actually happening, they represent, as we understand how they work, real kinds of things, right? So your dream can represent, in your dream you represent bodies, like things that take up physical space, like human bodies, but also the sense in which, like, this is a physical body, and this is a physical body, and this is a physical body, and this, the t-shirt, is a physical body. So dreams represent space and bodies, and geometry is true in them. And so while dreams, the particular event that happens in a dream may be false, the kinds of things at the most fundamental level that dreams represent are, as far as we know, right, they're real in our understanding of how dreams work, right? The dream isn't accurate of particulars, but it's accurate of real kinds of things. And so even if it turned out that we were dreaming, there's still knowledge that wouldn't be threatened by that, because we'd say, well, look, whether I'm dreaming or not, it's true that there are bodies. That's how my dream works. It works by representing real kinds of things, even though the particular things it represents aren't real. And geometry is true in dreams as well, right? Every square has 4 sides and all of that. Mathematics is still true in geometry. And so the dream worry gives us reason to think, okay, we know from even the sensory mistakes that some peripheral sensory opinions based on sensory evidence might be mistaken. And the dream worry, Descartes thinks, gives us reason to think that, well, our central beliefs also are not certain. It's at least possible that our evidence for them comes from dreams and not from reality, and so I have a body, that's fire, physics, astronomy. Those are not certain. But the belief there are bodies at all, there's space, it's filled with bodies, geometry applies to that space. Even if I'm dreaming, I don't have reason to doubt those most abstract and general claims. In fact, you might think, well, look, the fact that I can even have a dream depends upon my ability to accurately represent those very general kinds of things, even if the particular story the dream is telling is not true. And so for Descartes, even this dream worry is not radical enough. And so we're going to look at the last worry that Descartes raises, the evil genius, flawed creator worry, and we will look at that in the next video.